The betrayal happened again at 6:17 a.m. on March 15th. My phone buzzed against the silk sheets, and even before I opened my eyes, I knew what I would find. Maya's fake excited text about Jake's surprise anniversary dinner that would end in my public humiliation. Again, the vanilla candle on my nightstand flickered in the morning light, its familiar scent triggering a memory so vivid I could taste the humiliation. Sitting alone at Chez Laurent for 3 hours, emerald dress wrinkled with shame, while waiters whispered and strangers photographed my abandonment. The hashtag #ZoeWaits challenge had trended for days after that, my pain transformed into entertainment for millions. But that was my other life, the one where I died. I trembled as I reached for my phone, the weight of my engagement ring suddenly feeling like a shackle around my finger. Maya's message glowed on the screen exactly as I remembered. OMG, babe, Jake's been planning something amazing for your anniversary. I helped him pick the perfect restaurant. You're going to die when you see what he's got planned. The irony burned like acid in my throat. I had died, quite literally, 3 weeks after that dinner, when my car mysteriously veered off the Pacific Coast Highway. The police called it an accident, but I remembered the loosened brake lines, Maya's tears at my funeral looking suspiciously like relief, and Jake's grief interviews where he wore the Rolex I'd bought him while discussing how devastated he was to lose his soulmate. Standing in my walk-in closet, I stared at the emerald dress hanging exactly where I'd left it, where I would leave it if this timeline followed the same path. The silk felt cold against my fingertips, like touching my own funeral shroud. Maya had worn this same dress to Jake's first post-funeral interview, claiming it helped her feel close to Zoe's memory, while she cozied up to my grieving fiancé on national television. My hands shook as another memory surfaced, sharp and painful as broken glass. Marcus, the quiet cafe worker who tried to warn me, his earnest brown eyes pleading as he showed me photos of Jake and Maya together. I'd dismissed him as jealous, maybe even a little pathetic. Just some barista with a crush who couldn't accept that successful, beautiful people like Jake and Maya could exist in the same world as someone like him. The guilt tasted metallic on my tongue. Marcus had died too, just 2 days after my accident. Another mysterious mishap, another young person whose death barely made the local news. But now I understood. He'd been trying to save me, and I'd destroyed his credibility so thoroughly that when he persisted in telling the truth, Jake and Maya had silenced him permanently. I caught my reflection in the mirror and froze. My face looked exactly as it had at 19, but my eyes held the weight of 20 years' worth of betrayal and death. The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. I looked like an innocent teenager again, but my soul carried the bitter wisdom of someone who'd learned that the people closest to you could orchestrate your destruction with smiles on their faces. My phone buzzed again. Jake this time, his morning love text arriving right on schedule. "Good morning, beautiful. Can't wait to celebrate our love tonight. You mean everything to me." In my previous life, those words had made my heart flutter. Now they made my stomach churn. I could practically see him typing while Maya painted her nails beside him, both of them congratulating themselves on their brilliant plan to humiliate me publicly before stealing everything I owned. But this time would be different. I deleted Jake's message without reading it and opened my notes app. My fingers moved with steady purpose as I typed, "Revenge plan, day 1." The coffee shop across the street beckoned through my window, its familiar awning fluttering in the morning breeze. Marcus would be there, wiping down tables with the same careful precision he brought to everything, unaware that this time I was going to listen to every word he said. When Maya called 20 minutes later, gushing about dress shopping for the anniversary dinner, my voice remained as smooth as honey while ice-cold determination settled in my bones. "Of course," I murmured into the phone, already screenshotting her call log that showed dozens of messages to Jake over the past 3 months. "I can't wait to see what you two have planned." The game was about to begin again, but this time I knew all the rules. The cafe smelled like vanilla and second chances when I pushed through its glass door at 8:30 a.m. I'd changed into oversized sunglasses and a baseball cap, hoping to observe Marcus without the complicated weight of our shared history, or rather, our shared future that only I remembered. Marcus stood behind the counter arranging pastries with the same meticulous care I'd noticed in my previous life. his calloused hands moving efficiently despite the early morning rush. He looked exactly as I remembered, 22, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, and those earnest brown eyes that had tried so desperately to save me. The morning news played on the television mounted in the corner, and my chest tightened as a familiar segment began. Jake's face filled the screen, that practiced smile I'd once found charming, now revealing itself as calculated manipulation. He was being interviewed about influencer culture and authentic relationships, discussing how he'd helped his beloved girlfriend Zoe stay grounded despite her massive following. Marcus's jaw clenched as he watched, his movements becoming sharp and agitated. I heard him mutter to his coworker behind the espresso machine, "Lies and influencer worship. That girl has no idea what she's gotten herself into." My heart raced. Even now, before everything had gone wrong, Marcus could see through Jake's facade. How had I been so blind? "Lavender latte with oat milk," I ordered when I reached the counter, using the same order I'd made dozens of times in my previous life. Marcus looked up, and for a moment our eyes met. I saw recognition flicker across his features, not of who I was exactly, but of someone familiar, someone he'd seen before. "Coming right up," he said, his voice carrying that same gentle warmth I'd dismissed as simple customer service. "Find a seat anywhere you'd like." I chose a corner table where I could observe the cafe's rhythm while keeping the television in view. Marcus moved with quiet efficiency, but I noticed how he paused whenever Jake appeared on screen, his expression darkening with something that looked like protective anger. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Lunch at Nobu at 1? Need to make sure you're perfect for tonight." Perfect, as if I hadn't been perfect enough to avoid betrayal the first time. I typed back, "Can't wait, you always give the best advice." The lies came so easily now, lubricated by my knowledge of exactly how this game was played. Maya would spend lunch steering me toward the emerald dress, suggesting I live-stream the dinner for my followers and carefully planting seeds of the humiliation she and Jake had orchestrated. She'd play the supportive best friend while secretly directing me toward my own destruction. But this time, I was recording everything. At Nobu, Maya arrived 15 minutes late, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the afternoon light as she air-kissed my cheeks with performance-level enthusiasm. She wore a crop top that showed off her flat stomach and designer jeans that probably cost more than most people's rent, all purchased with the allowance her wealthy parents provided for her lifestyle blogging career. "You look gorgeous," she gushed, sliding into the booth across from me. "But you always do. Jake is so lucky." I smiled and activated the voice recording app hidden in my phone case. "I'm the lucky one. Having both you and Jake in my life makes everything perfect." Maya's eyes glittered with something that looked like satisfaction. "Speaking of perfect, I have ideas for tonight. You know how Jake loves when you interact with your followers, right? Maybe you could live stream part of the dinner? Your fans would die to see such a romantic evening." The suggestion hit exactly the same notes as my previous life, delivered with the same innocent enthusiasm that had convinced me to broadcast my own humiliation to millions of strangers. "That's such a sweet idea," I said, watching Maya's face carefully. "Did Jake mention that to you?" A micro-expression flickered across her features, surprise quickly masked by her practiced smile. "Oh, you know how boys think. I just figured he'd love seeing you happy and engaged with your audience. Plus, Chez Laurent is so photogenic." Chez Laurent. She knew the restaurant's name before I'd mentioned where we were going, just as I remembered. "How did you know we were going to Chez Laurent?" I asked, my voice light and curious rather than accusatory. Maya's cheeks flushed pink. "Didn't you mention it earlier? Or maybe Jake said something when we ran into each other at the gym yesterday." Another lie, another breadcrumb in the trail that would eventually expose their affair. I smiled and nodded as if satisfied by her explanation, but internally I cataloged every inconsistency, every tell that revealed the elaborate deception they'd constructed around my life. The lunch continued with Maya's performance, guiding me toward outfit choices and photo angles, suggesting hashtags and timing for maximum engagement. She painted herself as the devoted best friend who only wanted my happiness, But I could see the calculation behind every suggestion now, the way each piece of advice was designed to make my eventual humiliation more spectacular. "You should definitely wear the emerald dress," she said over dessert, her tone casual but her eyes sharp with anticipation. "The color makes your eyes look incredible, and it photographs beautifully under restaurant lighting." The same dress she'd wear to my memorial service, claiming it helped her feel connected to my memory while she seduced my grieving fiancé. "Perfect suggestion," I agreed, my smile never wavering. "You always know exactly what looks best on me." That evening, alone in my apartment, I systematically gathered evidence of their betrayal. Jake's location data from our shared app showed a clear pattern. Tuesday gym sessions that coincided with Maya's yoga classes, weekend work meetings at luxury hotels where Maya posted mysterious lobby photos, even grocery store visits where their receipts showed identical purchases made minutes apart. I created a private folder on my phone labeled Insurance and began screenshotting everything. Chat logs, location data, credit card statements Jake had access to through our joint account, even social media posts that revealed more than they'd intended when viewed with suspicious eyes. The pieces of their affair were so obvious now, laid out like a puzzle I'd been too trusting to solve the first time. Maya's sudden interest in fitness that coincided with Jake joining an expensive gym, her knowledge of his schedule, his preferences, his plans before I heard about them. The way they both seemed to light up around each other while treating me like an obligation they had to manage. But the real revelation came when I scrolled back through Maya's Instagram posts from the past 6 months. Hidden among her typical lifestyle content were subtle hints I'd missed completely. Shadows of a second person in mirrors behind her. Masculine hands reaching for coffee cups in her food photos. Even a reflection in her sunglasses that clearly showed Jake's profile. They'd been documenting their affair in plain sight, confident that I was too naive and trusting to notice the evidence right in front of me. My phone rang at 9 p.m. sharp, Jake's nightly check-in call, another routine I'd once found romantic, but now recognized as surveillance. "Hey, beautiful." His voice carried that practiced warmth that had once made me melt. "Looking forward to tomorrow night?" I can barely contain my excitement, I said. And for once, I was telling the complete truth. Maya helped me pick the perfect dress today. She has such incredible taste. There was a brief pause, and I could practically hear Maya breathing in the background, listening to every word. "She's a good friend," Jake said carefully. "I'm glad you two are so close. Makes planning surprises easier when I have an inside source." An inside source. The phrase slipped out so naturally, revealing exactly how he viewed my best friend. Not as Maya, the person, but as a tool for manipulating me. "I mentioned seeing this cute waiter at the restaurant when I confirmed our reservation," I continued, letting a breathy giggle color my voice. "He seemed really sweet." Jake's tone sharpened immediately. "A waiter? What did he look like?" "Oh, I barely noticed," I lied smoothly. "Just someone working there. Why?" "No reason. Just want to make sure the service is good for our special night." But I could hear the jealousy and calculation in his voice now, the way he was already planning to eliminate any potential witness or complication to their scheme. Just like they'd eliminated Marcus in my previous life when he'd tried to interfere with their plans. After hanging up, I sat in the darkness of my living room, watching the city lights twinkle beyond my windows. Tomorrow night, Jake and Maya expected to destroy me publicly while stealing everything I'd worked for. They expected the naive, trusting Zoe who'd made their manipulation so easy the first time. Instead, they were about to meet someone who remembered exactly how this game ended, and who had every intention of changing the rules. The emerald dress felt like armor when I slipped it on at 6 p.m. on March 16th. My reflection in the full-length mirror showed the same young woman who'd been humiliated exactly 1 year ago, but the eyes staring back at me held steel instead of innocence. I'd spent the day preparing meticulously. My phone was fully charged, my live stream settings optimized for maximum reach, and my backup recording devices hidden in my purse alongside printed copies of every piece of evidence I'd gathered about Jake and Maya's affair. If this was going to be a performance, I intended to make it unforgettable. The drive to Chez Laurent felt like driving toward my own execution, which, in a way, it had been the first time. The restaurant's elegant facade glowed with warm light, its valet station busy with couples arriving for romantic evenings that wouldn't end in betrayal and public humiliation. Unlike them, I knew exactly what was coming. "Good evening, Miss Chen." The maitre d' greeted me with the same professional warmth I remembered. "Your table is ready." I smiled graciously and followed him through the dining room, noting the subtle changes I could make to improve my revenge. Better camera angles, optimal lighting, strategic positioning to capture every moment of the evening's revelations. My reserved table sat in the center of the restaurant's main dining room, perfect for maximum visibility and social media impact. Jake had chosen well for his purposes. Unfortunately for him, it would serve my purposes even better. I settled into my chair and activated my phone's live stream, watching as viewers began joining immediately. My follower count climbed rapidly as notifications spread across social media. Zoe was going live from her anniversary dinner. "Hi, everyone," I said to the camera, my voice bright with the same enthusiasm I'd shown in my previous life. "I'm at Chez Laurent waiting for Jake to arrive for our 1-year anniversary dinner. Isn't this place gorgeous?" The chat filled with heart emojis and congratulations from followers who remembered our relationship timeline, who'd invested emotionally in our love story through months of carefully curated content. They had no idea they were about to witness its spectacular destruction. 7:15 p.m. Jake should have arrived by now. I checked my phone with a perfectly practiced worried expression, letting my followers see my growing concern as minutes ticked by without any word from my fiancé. "He must be running late from work," I explained to the camera, though my chest tight with remembered humiliation. "You know how dedicated he is to his clients." "Dedicated to Maya, maybe." At 7:30, I called Jake's phone, letting the live stream capture my increasingly anxious attempts to reach him. It went straight to voicemail, just as I'd known it would. He'd turned it off hours ago, probably while he and Maya celebrated their brilliant plan with champagne in her apartment. The chat began filling with concerned messages from my followers. Some suggested he might be planning an elaborate surprise. Others wondered if something had happened to him. A few perceptive viewers started questioning why a loving boyfriend would leave his girlfriend waiting on their anniversary without any communication. I played my role perfectly, the devoted girlfriend trying to stay positive while growing genuinely worried. It wasn't entirely an act. The memory of this exact abandonment still stung, even knowing it was coming. 8 p.m. arrived with no word from Jake. "I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation," I told my audience, though my voice carried a slight tremor now. The viewer count had climbed to over 50,000 people, drawn by the unfolding drama of a public anniversary disaster. At 8:15, I excused myself to use the restroom, taking my phone with me to maintain the illusion that this was all spontaneous and unplanned. In the privacy of the ladies' room, I opened my prepared folder of evidence and took a deep breath. Time for the real show to begin. When I returned to my table, I made a show of checking my phone again, this time letting my expression shift from worry to confusion, then growing horror. My acting had improved significantly since dying, it seemed. "Oh my God," I whispered, loud enough for the live stream to capture, but quiet enough to seem like an accident. "This can't be right." My phone screen showed Jake's location data from our shared app, a screenshot I'd prepared earlier showing him at Maya's apartment, time-stamped for the exact moment he was supposed to be arriving at the restaurant. The chat exploded as viewers caught glimpses of the evidence. Comments flew past faster than I could read them, but the general sentiment was clear: shock, outrage, and growing suspicion about Jake's absence. "There must be some mistake," I said, my voice shaking with perfectly calibrated betrayal. "Let me check something else." I opened more screenshots. Months of location data showing Jake and Maya at the same places, at the same times, during moments when they'd claimed to be elsewhere. The evidence painted an undeniable picture of systematic deception. My follower count hit 100,000 viewers, then 200,000. The restaurant around me had grown quiet, other diners turning to watch the drama unfolding at the young woman's table in the center of the room. Even the servers had begun lingering nearby, drawn by the electric tension of public betrayal being broadcast live to hundreds of thousands of people. That's when I spotted Marcus. He was working the evening shift, wearing the same careful professionalism I remembered, moving between tables with subtle efficiency. When our eyes met across the dining room, I saw recognition there, and something that looked like protective concern. I think I need to call my best friend, I announced to the live stream, my voice carrying just the right note of desperate hope. Maya will know what's going on. She's been helping Jake plan tonight. I dialed Maya's number, putting the call on speaker so my audience could hear everything. It rang 4 times before she answered, her voice slightly breathless and distracted. Zoe, what's wrong? Maya, thank God. I'm at the restaurant and Jake isn't here. Do you know where he is? Did something happen with the surprise? There was a pause that lasted just a beat too long. What? No, I haven't heard from him since yesterday. Maybe his phone died? But I could hear something in the background of her call, music, the same jazz playlist Jake always played in his apartment. And underneath that, a male voice saying something too quiet to make out clearly. The chat caught it too. Comments poured in, pointing out the background noise, questioning why Maya would have Jake's music playing if she hadn't heard from him. Are you sure you don't know where he is? I pressed, letting desperation creep into my voice. You've been texting him all week about tonight. What? No, I haven't been. Zoe, you're not making sense. Are you okay? The lie came so easily to her, but this time I was ready for it. Maya, I said slowly, I can see Jake's location on our shared app. He's at your apartment right now. Silence. The kind of silence that spoke volumes to 300,000 viewers and counting. That's impossible, Maya finally said, but her voice had lost its confident tone. My apartment? Why would he be? Maybe the app is glitching. Let me show everyone what I'm seeing, I said, angling my phone so the live stream could clearly capture Jake's location pin sitting directly on Maya's address. This is where my fiancé is right now, while I'm sitting alone at our anniversary dinner. The chat erupted in real-time outrage. Hashtags began forming organically. #Zoe betrayal, #where is Jake, #Maya lies. My story was spreading beyond my own followers now, shared and reshared across every social media platform. Zoe, I can explain, Maya started. Can you? I interrupted, my voice carrying the first hint of steel I'd allowed to show. Because I have months of evidence showing you and Jake together. Location data, photos, receipts. Would you like me to share those with everyone too? I heard a crash in the background of Maya's call, like someone dropping something in panic. Don't! Maya said, her voice sharp with desperation. Zoe, please don't do this. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. I understand that my best friend and my fiancé have been lying to me for months. I understand that this entire dinner was planned to humiliate me publicly. I understand that you both thought I was too stupid and trusting to figure it out. The viewer count hit 500,000. But here's what you didn't understand, I continued, standing from my chair with newfound confidence. I'm not as naive as you thought, and I'm definitely not as forgiving. I ended the call and turned back to the camera, my smile sharp as broken glass. Well, everyone, it looks like my anniversary dinner just became something very different. But you know what? I think I'm going to stay and enjoy dessert anyway. After all, someone very wise once told me that the best revenge is living well. I caught Marcus's eye across the restaurant and smiled. A real smile this time, warm and genuine. He approached my table with careful professionalism, but I could see the admiration in his eyes. Would you like to see our dessert menu, miss? He asked, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around us. Actually, I said, loud enough for the live stream to capture, I'd like to hear about your favorite. I have a feeling this is going to be a night to remember. The chocolate soufflé Marcus recommended was perfection, rich, decadent, and infinitely sweeter than any revenge I could have imagined. 20 minutes later, Jake burst through the restaurant's front door, his hair disheveled and his face flushed with panic. He'd clearly thrown on whatever clothes he could find, and there was a telltale lipstick stain on his collar that definitely wasn't my shade. He rushed to my table while 700,000 viewers watched him dig his grave deeper with every word. Zoe, baby, I can explain everything, he gasped, completely oblivious to the phone still live streaming everything. My phone died and I lost track of time and... Jake, I said calmly, taking another bite of my soufflé. You might want to lower your voice. We have an audience. His eyes widened as he noticed my phone, the viewer count. The undeniable evidence that his private disaster had become very, very public. "Turn it off," he hissed. "Turn it off right now." "Why?" I asked innocently. "I thought you loved my social media presence. Wasn't that one of the things you found so attractive about me? My ability to share our relationship with the world?" The color drained from his face as he realized the magnitude of what had just happened. His lies, Maya's lies, their entire conspiracy had been exposed to nearly 1 million people in real time. "Zoe, please," he whispered, reaching for my phone. "We can fix this. Just turn off the camera and we can talk privately." I pulled my phone away from his grasping hands and smiled at the camera one last time. "Thank you all for joining me tonight," I said to my audience. "This has been educational. Sometimes the people closest to us show their true colors in the most unexpected ways." I ended the live stream and looked up at Jake, my expression calm as still water. "Now," I said, "let's talk." Jake and Maya appeared at my apartment door at 7 a.m. the next morning, both looking like they'd aged years overnight. Jake's usually perfect hair was disheveled, dark circles under his eyes, suggesting he'd spent the night doing damage control. Maya's designer outfit couldn't hide the red blotchiness around her eyes or the way her hands trembled as she clutched her phone. I'd been expecting them, of course. In my previous life, they'd tried this same desperate reconciliation attempt, though without the added pressure of 1 million witnesses to their betrayal. "Zoe, please," Jake started before I'd even fully opened the door. "We need to talk. What happened last night was all a misunderstanding." I stepped aside to let them in, my hidden cameras already recording everything. This time, I'd have evidence of their manipulative tactics, their coordinated lies, their complete lack of genuine remorse. "A misunderstanding?" I repeated, settling into my favorite armchair while they remained standing, shifting nervously in my living room. Which part was misunderstood? The months of secret meetings, the matching location data, or Maya breathing heavily on the phone while Jake's jazz playlist played in the background? Maya's face flushed scarlet. "It's not what it looked like." "Really?" I interrupted, pulling out my phone. "Because I have screenshots of your location data too, Maya. 3 months of you being at the same hotels, restaurants, and gyms as Jake, during times when you told me you were at yoga classes, family dinners, and girls' nights." I watched their expressions crumble as I displayed the evidence I'd gathered. Every lie they'd told, every alibi they'd constructed, every moment they'd thought they were being clever. It was all documented with brutal digital precision. "You were helping him plan my anniversary dinner," I continued, my voice steady as stone. "Just not the kind of dinner I was expecting." Jake dropped onto my couch, his head in his hands. "Zoe, I love you. What happened with Maya was a mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment. It didn't mean anything." "Months of lapses in judgment," I corrected. "And if it didn't mean anything, why did you abandon me at our anniversary dinner to be with her?" Maya finally found her voice, though it came out thin and desperate. "He was going to break up with you gently after dinner. We were trying to figure out how to handle the situation without hurting you." The lie was so audacious it actually made me laugh. By humiliating me publicly, by letting me wait alone at a restaurant while hundreds of thousands of people watched, that was your idea of protecting my feelings? "That wasn't supposed to happen," Jake said quickly. "You weren't supposed to live stream the dinner. Maya suggested it, but I thought you'd forgotten." He stopped mid-sentence, realizing he'd just admitted to planning my public humiliation. Maya shot him a venomous look. "I never said she should live stream it. That was your idea, remember? You said it would make the breakup more impactful." And there it was, the moment they turned on each other, just as I'd hoped they would. "My idea?" Jake's voice rose with indignation. "You're the one who wanted to teach her a lesson about being so naive. You said she needed to learn that real life isn't like her fantasy social media world. You said she deserved it for flaunting her money and followers," Maya shot back. "You called her spoiled and said watching her get humbled would be entertaining." I listened to them destroy each other with the same cold fascination I might watch a nature documentary about predators fighting over carrion. Each accusation revealed more of their genuine contempt for me, their complete lack of love or even basic respect. Both of you can stop, I said finally, my voice cutting through their increasingly vicious argument. I heard enough last night to understand exactly who you both are. I stood and walked to my kitchen, noting how their eyes followed me nervously. On the counter sat a bag of expensive coffee beans. A small gift Marcus had included with my souffle the night before, along with a handwritten note thanking me for my courage. Maya's eyes narrowed when she spotted the coffee beans. What's that? Coffee, I said simply, from someone who actually cares about my well-being. The waiter? Jake's voice carried a sharp edge of jealousy and calculation. Zoe, you need to be careful. Guys like that, they see opportunity when successful women are vulnerable. He's probably just trying to take advantage of the situation. The projection was almost funny. Jake warning me about someone taking advantage, when he'd spent months systematically betraying and manipulating me. His name is Marcus, I said, enjoying the way Jake's jaw clenched at the familiarity in my voice. And unlike some people, he tried to warn me about what was happening instead of orchestrating it. Maya's phone buzzed, and I watched her face go pale as she read whatever notification had just arrived. What is it? Jake demanded. Maya held up her phone with a shaking hand. Someone posted security footage from the restaurant. From last night. It shows me arriving at the restaurant at 6:30, watching through the window while Zoe waited alone, then leaving when she started live streaming. My breath caught. I hadn't known about that footage, but it was perfect. Visual proof that Maya had been there, had seen my abandonment, had chosen to let it continue rather than warn me or make Jake face the consequences of his cruelty. They're calling it the best friend betrayal, Maya continued, her voice barely above a whisper. It's been viewed 2 million times since this morning. Jake snatched her phone to see for himself, his face cycling through expressions of panic, rage, and desperate calculation. We need to control this narrative, he said, his business training kicking in even in crisis. We'll say Zoe manipulated the situation, edited things to look worse than they were. We'll claim she's having some kind of breakdown and can't be trusted. Stop. The word came out harder than I'd intended, loaded with a year's worth of death and rebirth and bitter wisdom. Just stop. They both turned to stare at me, perhaps hearing something in my voice that they'd never heard before. You want to claim I'm having a breakdown? I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. You want to paint me as unstable and manipulative? Go ahead, try it. I pulled out my phone and opened my recent photos, showing them screenshot after screenshot of their location data, their secret communications, their financial records that proved months of deception. Try explaining away 3 months of evidence. Try convincing 2 million people that I somehow manipulated GPS data and security cameras and your own voices on recorded phone calls. Maya started crying, real tears this time, not the performative emotion she'd used to manipulate me for years. Zoe, please, she sobbed. I'm sorry. I know I screwed up, but I can't handle this. My parents are threatening to cut me off. The brands I work with are dropping me. People are showing up at my apartment building. I'm getting death threats, Jake added, his voice hollow. My business partners are talking about removing me from projects. Someone leaked my client list and they're all canceling contracts. I felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy if I hadn't remembered waking up in the hospital after my car accident. Tubes down my throat and the taste of my own blood in my mouth, while they'd stood beside my bed, planning how to split my inheritance. I'm sorry you're experiencing consequences for your actions, I said, and I was surprised to find that I actually meant it. But those consequences aren't my fault. They're the natural result of the choices you made. You don't understand, Maya said desperately. This is ruining our lives forever, over one mistake. One mistake? The words came out sharp enough to cut. Maya, you helped plan my public humiliation. You watched me sit alone in that restaurant for over an hour, knowing exactly why Jake wasn't coming, and you did nothing. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. And Jake, I continued, turning to face him directly, you didn't just cheat on me. You created an elaborate scheme to destroy me emotionally in front of 1 million people, then steal my followers and my inheritance while I was too broken to fight back. His face went ashen. How did you know about your plan to take over my social media accounts? About the inheritance you've been researching since we got engaged? About Maya's role in gaining access to my financial information? I smiled, and it felt like baring my teeth. I know more than you think, Jake. I know about all of it. The color drained completely from his face, and I realized he was finally beginning to understand that this wasn't just about a cheating scandal anymore. This was about something much, much bigger. Maya was still crying, but her tears had taken on a desperate edge. What do you want from us? Money? We'll pay whatever. I don't want your money, I said quietly. I want you to understand what you've done. Not just to me, but to yourselves. You destroyed something real for something fake, and now you get to live with the consequences. I walked to my front door and opened it, the morning air carrying the scent of coffee and new possibilities. I think you should go now, I said. Both of you. They left without another word, their heads down like defeated animals slinking away from a fight they'd started but couldn't finish. After they were gone, I poured myself a cup of Marcus's coffee and sat by my window, watching the city wake up below. The coffee was perfect, rich and complex, with notes of chocolate and vanilla that reminded me of second chances and honest intentions. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hi, Zoe. This is Marcus from Chez Laurent. I hope you're doing okay after last night. If you need someone to talk to who understands complicated situations, I'm here. No pressure. M. I stared at the message for a long moment, remembering how this same conversation had played out in my previous life. But this time, I wasn't going to dismiss him as just some hopeful barista with a crush. This time, I was going to listen. Thank you, I typed back. I'd like that very much. Coffee later today? His response came quickly. I know just the place. Somewhere quiet where we won't be bothered by photographers or curious crowds. Within hours, my revenge against Jake and Maya had taken on a life of its own. The hashtag #ZoeBetrayal was trending globally, with millions of people sharing their own stories of betrayal and supporting my courage in exposing the truth. But more importantly, legitimate journalists were starting to investigate Jake's business practices and Maya's sudden lifestyle improvements that didn't match her declared income. I had a feeling their problems were just beginning. The coffee shop Marcus chose was a tiny hole-in-the-wall place 15 minutes outside the city, the kind of establishment that survived on quality rather than social media presence. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee and an expression of genuine concern. How are you holding up? He asked as I sat down across from him. Honestly, better than I expected, I said, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. It's strange, but exposing the truth feels more liberating than devastating. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes the worst part isn't the betrayal itself, but living with the lies. Once everything's out in the open, you can finally start healing. His words hit closer to home than he could possibly know. In my previous life, I'd never gotten the chance to heal from Jake and Maya's betrayal. They'd made sure of that. But now, with the truth exposed and their power over me broken, I could feel something loosening in my chest that had been tight with pain and secrets. You tried to warn me before, I said quietly. Weeks ago, you tried to show me photos of them together. I owe you an apology for how I reacted. Marcus's expression grew serious. You don't owe me anything. I understood why you couldn't believe it then. When people we trust betray us, sometimes our minds protect us by refusing to see the truth until we're ready to handle it. You seem to know a lot about betrayal, I observed. He was quiet for a moment, staring into his coffee. My family owns a chain of restaurants and hotels. I've seen a lot of people who think wealth and status give them the right to treat others as disposable. I've also seen what happens when good people finally stand up to them. I felt something shift in the air between us, a recognition of shared understanding that went deeper than the surface attraction I'd dismissed in my previous life. Is that why you work at the cafe instead of in your family business? I asked. Partly. I wanted to understand the industry from the ground up, see how regular employees are treated, learn what really makes a business work beyond the profit margins. He looked up at me with those steady brown eyes. And partly because I've seen too many people get corrupted by easy money and inherited power. I didn't want to become someone who forgot how to value real work and genuine relationships. The contrast with Jake couldn't have been sharper. Where Jake had seen my inheritance as something to exploit, Marcus had deliberately walked away from his own privilege to build character and understanding. There's something else, Marcus continued, his voice growing more serious. Something I didn't tell you before because I wasn't sure how to explain it without sounding crazy. My pulse quickened. What do you mean? Jake and Maya aren't just cheating partners. They're part of something bigger. I've been documenting their activities for months because they fit the pattern of a romance scam operation that's been targeting young women with social media followings and family money. The coffee cup slipped in my hands, nearly spilling onto the table. What? 3 other women in the past 2 years, all influencers, all with inheritance money, all who ended up dead in accidents after their boyfriends and best friends isolated them socially and gained access to their finances. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a tablet, showing me a series of photographs and documents. Jake's real name is James Morrison. He's got a history of targeting vulnerable women. Maya is Isabella Santos. She's been his partner in at least 4 confirmed cons. The world tilted around me as I stared at the evidence. Photos of Jake with other women, all young, all wealthy, all now dead. Maya with different hair colors and styles, playing the supportive best friend to each victim. Bank records showing systematic theft of inheritance money. Insurance claims that painted a picture of convenient accidents that eliminated witnesses and secured large payouts. They killed me, I whispered, the words coming out before I could stop them. Marcus looked up sharply. What did you say? I caught myself, realizing how that must have sounded. I mean, they would have killed me if this had continued, like the others. But Marcus was studying my face with an intensity that made me wonder if he'd heard exactly what I'd meant to say. Zoe, he said carefully, is there something you need to tell me? Something about why you were so prepared last night? Why you had all that evidence ready? Why you seemed to know exactly what they were planning? My heart hammered against my ribs. How could I explain that I'd lived through this exact scenario before, that I'd died, and somehow been given a second chance to make different choices? I had suspicious for a while, I said finally, which was technically true. Little things that didn't add up. I started paying attention, gathering evidence, preparing for the worst. Marcus nodded, but his eyes remained sharp with questions I couldn't answer. The important thing now is that we have enough evidence to stop them from hurting anyone else, he continued. I've been working with federal investigators who specialize in romance fraud cases. Your live stream last night provided the final piece they needed to move forward with arrests. Arrests? The word came out breathless with hope and disbelief. Jake and Maya are part of a larger network. The evidence you exposed publicly gave investigators probable cause for search warrants. They executed them this morning. I stared at him, hardly daring to believe what I was hearing. They're in custody. As of 2 hours ago, along with 3 other associates who've been running similar cons in different cities. Marcus reached across the table and covered my hand with his. You didn't just save yourself, Zoe. You saved every woman they would have targeted after you. The weight of that realization hit me like a physical blow. In my previous life, I'd been just one victim in a series. Now, I'd become the one who stopped the pattern, who ensured no other young woman would suffer what I had endured. There's going to be a lot of media attention, Marcus warned, probably more than you've dealt with even after last night. The FBI will want to interview you, and there will likely be a trial where you'll need to testify. I nodded, feeling strangely calm despite the magnitude of what he was telling me. I can handle it. I know you can, he said, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of my hand. You're stronger than they ever realized. Stronger than I think you even realized until last night. If only he knew how literally true that was. Marcus, I said, looking into his eyes and seeing the same sincerity that had tried to save me in my previous life. Why did you help me? You barely knew me. You could have just minded your own business and stayed safe. His smile was soft and a little sad. Because everyone deserves to have someone in their corner who sees them for who they really are, not what they can provide. And because... He paused, seeming to weigh his words carefully. Because from the first time I saw you in my cafe, you seemed like someone worth protecting. Even when I was with Jake? Even when I dismissed your warnings and probably seemed like a spoiled rich girl who couldn't see past her own privilege? Even then, he said without hesitation, I could see who you really were underneath all the performance you felt you had to maintain. The way you thanked every server by name, how you left generous tips even when service was slow, the way you'd put down your phone to really listen when someone was talking to you. Those aren't things you can fake. Tears pricked at my eyes. Not the bitter tears of betrayal I'd shed so many times, but something warmer and more healing. I'd like to get to know the real you too, I said quietly. If you're willing to be patient while I figure out who that is, without Jake and Maya's influence. I've got all the time in the world, Marcus replied, and I believed him. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I felt like I might actually have a future worth living. 3 weeks later, I sat in a conference room at the FBI field office, staring at photographs that made my stomach turn. Marcus sat beside me, his hand a steady anchor, as Special Agent Rivera spread evidence across the mahogany table like a dealer laying out cards. What we initially thought was a simple romance fraud case has revealed something much larger, Agent Rivera explained, her voice clinical but kind. James Morrison, the man you knew as Jake, and Isabella Santos, who called herself Maya, are part of an organized network that's been operating for over 5 years. The photographs showed young women I'd never seen before, but their stories felt horrifyingly familiar. Sarah Chen, 22, social media influencer with 800K followers, died in a hiking accident 3 months after her boyfriend gained access to her trust fund. Rebecca Martinez, 24, lifestyle blogger with family money, drowned in her bathtub after her best friend convinced her to change her will. Emma Thompson, 20, whose parents owned a tech company, overdosed on pills she'd never been prescribed after her fiancé isolated her from family and friends. They were all murdered, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Agent Rivera nodded grimly. We believe so. The pattern is consistent across 12 cases over 5 years. Jake and Maya were the primary operators, but they had a network of associates who provided logistical support, false identities, and alibis. Marcus squeezed my hand. Zoe, there's something else you need to know. Agent Rivera pulled out another file, this one thicker than the others. The night of your anniversary dinner, we had surveillance teams positioned around the restaurant and your apartment building. We'd been tracking their operations for months, but we needed solid evidence of their criminal conspiracy to make arrests. You were watching them? I asked, confused. We were watching you, Marcus said quietly. Protecting you. I turned to stare at him. Pieces of a puzzle I hadn't even known existed, suddenly clicking into place. What do you mean? Agent Rivera answered for him. Marcus isn't just a cafe worker, Zoe. He's a federal consultant who specializes in infiltrating criminal networks that target wealthy young women. He'd been working this case for 8 months when Jake and Maya selected you as their next victim. The room seemed to tilt around Mai. Your FBI? Consultant, Marcus corrected gently. My family's hospitality business gives me access to the kinds of venues and social circles where these predators operate. I volunteer my time to help catch them. I pulled my hand away from his, a cold numbness spreading through my chest. So this was all an act? Your concern for me, the warnings, everything? No. The word came out sharp with urgency. Zoe, no. The case was real, but everything else, my feelings for you, my respect for who you are, wanting to protect you, that was all real. Agent Rivera cleared her throat diplomatically. Perhaps I should explain the timeline. Marcus first identified Jake and Maya's pattern in November. He started working at the cafe you frequented in December to monitor their activities and gather evidence. But it wasn't until January that he realized they'd selected you as their target. And then, I asked, my voice hollow. Then he broke protocol, Agent Rivera said, shooting Marcus a disapproving look. He was supposed to maintain his cover and gather evidence. Instead, he tried to warn you directly. Multiple times. I remembered those interactions differently now. Not random acts of kindness from a smitten barista, but calculated attempts to save my life from someone who knew exactly what Jake and Maya were planning. I couldn't just watch them destroy you, Marcus said, his voice raw with emotion. The more I got to know you, the real you, not the social media persona, the more I realized I couldn't treat you like an assignment. You deserved better than being sacrificed for a case. So, the night of the restaurant, I said slowly, you knew exactly what was going to happen. We knew Jake wouldn't show up. We knew Maya would likely be nearby to witness your humiliation. What we didn't expect was for you to turn the tables so completely. Agent Rivera pulled out printed screenshots from my live stream. Your evidence gathering, your strategic revelation of their affair, the way you maintained composure while exposing their lies, it was masterful. It gave us everything we needed for arrest warrants, Marcus added. But more than that, it showed their network that their primary operators had been compromised. They started making mistakes, trying to cover their tracks, and that led us to the other associates. I stared at the photographs of dead women, thinking about my own death in another timeline, about the car accident that had been anything but accidental. How many people are in this network? I asked. 17 arrests so far, Agent Rivera said, including the mechanic who sabotaged victims' cars, the doctor who provided untraceable drugs, and the lawyer who helped transfer assets after the murders. My blood ran cold. Sabotaged cars? Marcus and Agent Rivera exchanged a look that told me they'd been expecting this question. Zoe, Agent Rivera said carefully, is there something you want to tell us about why you were so prepared that night? Why you seemed to know their plan in advance? The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. How could I explain that I'd lived through this exact scenario before? That I'd died in a car accident that was clearly no accident? That some supernatural force had given me a second chance to expose the truth? I had nightmares, I said finally, which was technically true. The memories of my previous life certainly felt like nightmares now. Dreams about dying in a car accident, about Jake and Maya standing over my hospital bed planning how to spend my inheritance. I started taking precautions. Agent Rivera nodded as if this made perfect sense. Trauma can manifest in many ways. Sometimes our subconscious picks up on dangers our conscious mind misses. But Marcus was watching me with those perceptive eyes that seemed to see straight through to my soul. The important thing is that your instincts, however they manifested, saved not just your life, but potentially dozens of others, Agent Rivera continued. This network has been expanding rapidly. Without your evidence, they would have continued operating for years. What happens now? I asked. The trial will begin in 6 months. With the evidence we've gathered, including your testimony, we expect full convictions for all 17 defendants. Jake and Isabella are looking at life sentences for multiple counts of murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Life sentences. In my previous timeline, they'd gotten away with everything, living comfortably on stolen money while their victims rotted in graves. The justice felt almost too good to be true. There's one more thing, Marcus said, his voice uncertain for the first time since I'd known him. Now that the case is closed and the network is dismantled, I won't have any official reason to stay in contact with you, but I'd like to, if you're willing. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man who'd tried to save me in 2 different lifetimes, who'd risked his career to warn me about dangers I'd been too naive to see, who'd been honest about his deception even when it might cost him my trust. Marcus, I said slowly, in all of this, the case, the surveillance, the investigation, was there ever a moment when you were just Marcus talking to Zoe? Not an FBI consultant protecting a target? Not a witness gathering evidence? Just us? His smile was soft and a little uncertain. Every conversation we had after you realized who Jake and Maya really were. Every moment at the coffee shop when you let your guard down and talked about what you actually wanted from life instead of what your social media image required. Every time you looked at me like I was someone worth knowing instead of just another service worker, you had to be polite to. And now, I asked, now I'd like to find out who we are when neither of us is performing a role or protecting secrets. I thought about the dead women in those photographs, about the life I'd lost and somehow regained, about second chances and the courage it took to trust someone new after betrayal. I'd like that too, I said, but I need you to understand something first. Marcus nodded, waiting patiently for me to find my words. I'm not the same person I was 3 weeks ago. Going through this, exposing Jake and Maya, learning about the murders, understanding how close I came to being another victim, it's changed me. I don't know who I am without the fear and the performance and the need to be perfect for everyone else. Good, Marcus said, surprising me. Perfect was never real anyway. I'd rather know the complicated, imperfect, real you than the polished version you thought everyone wanted to see. Agent Rivera gathered her files and stood to leave, but paused at the door. Zoe, she said, what you did took incredible courage. Not just exposing Jake and Maya, but surviving their manipulation and finding the strength to fight back. You should be proud of yourself. After she left, Marcus and I sat in the quiet conference room, the weight of everything we'd learned settling around us like dust after an explosion. So, I said finally, how do we do this? How do we build something real when it started with such complicated circumstances? Marcus smiled, the expression transforming his entire face from handsome to breathtaking. The same way everyone does, he said, one honest conversation at a time. The trial began on a crisp October morning, 6 months after my live-streamed anniversary dinner had exposed the network of predators who'd been hunting women like me for years. I sat in the witness box wearing a simple navy dress, my hair pulled back in a professional bun, facing the 17 defendants who'd made killing and stealing into an art form. Jake, James Morrison, looked haggard and desperate in his orange jumpsuit, his once perfect appearance now hollow and defeated. Maya, Isabella Santos, had aged years in the months since her arrest, her designer wardrobe replaced by prison clothes that hung loose on her diminished frame. Miss Chen, the prosecutor began, please tell the court about your relationship with the defendants James Morrison and Isabella Santos. For the next 4 hours, I walked the jury through the systematic manipulation, the elaborate lies, the carefully orchestrated betrayal that had been designed to end with my death and the theft of my inheritance. I showed them evidence, played recordings, and explained how a simple anniversary dinner had revealed a conspiracy of murder that spanned multiple states and countless victims. The defense attorneys tried their best to discredit me, painting me as a spoiled influencer who'd staged the entire evening for social media attention. But they couldn't explain away the bodies, the financial records, or the testimony of the other associates who'd turned state's evidence in exchange for reduced sentences. During a recess, Jake's lawyer approached me in the courthouse hallway. My client would like to speak with you privately, he said, his expression professionally neutral. He's willing to provide additional information about the network's operations in exchange for your recommendation for a reduced sentence. I looked through the courtroom doors at Jake, slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. The man who'd once commanded rooms with his charisma and confidence now looked like exactly what he was, a pathetic predator facing the consequences of his choices. I'll listen, I said, but I'm not making any promises. 20 minutes later, I sat across from Jake in a small conference room, his lawyer and the prosecutor flanking us like opposing armies. Marcus waited outside, respecting my need to face this moment alone, but close enough to provide support if I needed it. Zoe, Jake began, his voice hoarse with desperation. I need you to understand that I never wanted to hurt you. The plan was just to break up with you after the dinner, take some of your followers, maybe access your inheritance through legal manipulation. The murder stuff, that was all Maya's idea. I stared at him calmly, unmoved by his attempt to rewrite history. That's interesting, I said, because the FBI has recordings of you discussing which method would look most accidental. Your voice, Jake. Talking about loosening brake lines and staging overdoses? His face crumbled. You don't understand the pressure I was under. Maya had evidence of my involvement in the other cases. She was blackmailing me. So you were a victim too? I asked, my voice carrying just enough incredulity to make him flinch. Yes, I mean, not like you, but she forced me to participate. I was trapped. I leaned forward slightly, studying his face like I might examine an interesting insect. Jake, I said quietly, do you remember what you said to Maya about me 3 days before our anniversary dinner? His confusion was genuine. What? You said I was too trusting and stupid to live, and that watching me figure out the truth would be almost as satisfying as spending her money. I pulled out my phone and played a recording I'd kept from my evidence gathering. Your voice again, Jake. Your words. The color drained from his face as he heard his own cruelty played back to him. I was angry, he whispered. I didn't mean. You meant every word, I interrupted. Just like you meant it when you told Maya that I deserved what was coming to me because I'd been flaunting my privilege. Just like you meant it when you researched the best locations for staging car accidents. His lawyer cleared his throat uncomfortably. Miss Chen, my client is prepared to provide substantial cooperation in exchange for. No. The word fell into the room like a stone into still water, creating ripples of silence that spread to every corner. I'm sorry, the lawyer said. No, I repeated, my voice calm as winter morning. I won't recommend leniency. I won't accept his cooperation. I won't pretend that his fear of consequences constitutes genuine remorse. Jake's face contorted with desperation. Zoe, please, I know I hurt you, but I can make it right. I can help put away the other people in the network, give you information the FBI doesn't have yet. You've already been caught, Jake. The network has already been dismantled. Your cooperation isn't valuable. It's just your last attempt to manipulate the situation to your advantage. But I loved you, he said, his voice breaking with what might have been genuine emotion for the first time I'd ever heard from him. Some part of what we had was real. It had to be. I studied his face, searching for any trace of the man I'd once thought I knew, the man I'd once believed loved me. No, I said finally. It wasn't real. None of it was real, Jake. You saw a target, a young woman with money and influence and enough naivete to be easily manipulated. You crafted a persona designed to make me fall in love with a person who never existed. That's not love. That's hunting. His composure finally cracked completely, tears streaming down his face as he realized that his last gambit had failed. Please, he whispered, I'll do anything. I'll confess to everything, make sure Maya gets the maximum sentence. I'll testify against everyone who's still out there. Just please don't let them give me life in prison. Please. I stood up, smoothing my dress with steady hands. Jake, I said, my voice carrying the weight of 2 lifetimes' worth of pain and wisdom. In another world, you and Maya succeeded in killing me. You stole my inheritance, built new lives on my blood, and moved on to destroy other women just like me. You felt no remorse then, and you feel none now. Only fear of punishment. I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the handle. You took my life once already. I won't let you take my justice too. The door closed behind me with a soft click, sealing Jake's fate as surely as if I'd turned a key in a lock. Outside in the hallway, Marcus was waiting with a cup of coffee and a gentle smile. How do you feel? He asked, studying my face carefully. Free, I said, and meant it completely. 2 weeks later, the verdicts came down like an avalanche of justice. Jake, life without parole for 12 counts of first-degree murder and conspiracy. Maya, life without parole for the same charges. The other 15 network members received sentences ranging from 25 years to life, depending on their level of involvement. I watched from the gallery as they were led away in shackles, their heads down and their futures reduced to concrete cells and regret. Maya looked back once, catching my eye, and I saw something that might have been an apology or might have been hatred. It didn't matter anymore. Justice had been served. The dead could rest. And I could finally, truly begin to live.